All right. Can I start? Hi, my name is Alex DiGiovani. I teach computer art and design here at Ocean Township High School. So obviously I didn't grow up here. I grew up down in South Jersey, way below exit 44 in a little place called Pleasantville, New Jersey. It's a little town right outside of Atlantic City in long before you were born. And growing up very early on, I was very drawn to art. Loved to draw. It was my favorite thing in the world. And one of my favorite people in the world was my grandmother. That we called Mary D. She didn't want to be called Grandma. So I would sit on the couch with her. She would be watching her stories, and I would just draw. And I think why that sticks out so much in my head is that she would give me a lot of feedback, whether I wanted to hear it or not. And it wasn't flowery. It was always incredibly honest. It was always very blunt. But always respectful at the same time. And I think it stuck out in my head because it was very refreshing for an adult to be very honest with a 5 or 6-year-old. And so that when I think about art and why I draw and why I do what I do, I always think of her and I think of that encouragement. And she was a really close person as I was growing up. Socially, not really a popular kid. I was definitely a little bit of a weirdo. I never really fit into whatever was popular at the time or what was going on. Never, no crazy stories like that or anything, but definitely a little bit of an oddball. And I felt very content just drawing pictures and doing what I needed to do in school to get through it. But definitely my go-to is always art, which is why when I went to high school, I specifically really aimed at focusing on the arts. And then when I went to college, I focused on graphic design as well. One of the things that when I reflect on growing up, I always had a very hard time making friends and that social aspect of it. So as I met people growing up, whether it was in high school or college, when I would develop those friendships, they're always very special to me. I would always make a point of getting to know them for who they are. I'm really good for a one-on-one conversation. And, every friendship I've had pretty much, I'm still friends with a lot of those people. I know them inside and out. They know me inside and out. And so one of the things that really reflecting on growing up, having a hard time, becoming friends with people, it's that when you would develop those friendships, you really do appreciate them. So there was a man I met in 2012 who so eccentric. He was a soccer player. He was so eccentric, big fluorescent clothes, big beard, bracelets from here to here. But overall, came off as an athlete, stoic, but also very warm. A lot of contradictions there, but you get the point. And he was someone that I, growing up, would always look at and go, wow, they'd never really want to be friends with me. And he immediately wanted to be friends with me, and I immediately wanted to be friends with him. And very quickly that summer, we got very close. And that's just how he was with everybody. He was an incredibly kind person and very hard on himself. A little lost in life, never really had a 9-to-5 job. He would gamble to make extra money. And we would have these long conversations about what it was that he wanted in life and who he saw himself with, and did he see himself with a family? He never really knew. And he always kind of seemed someone a little in the muck, a little lost. And that's where a lot of our conversations would be, just in terms of, where do you think you're going with this, And so, especially with like being a professional gambler, which was always odd, but whatever, that was his life. And so we got close. He would go on these like long traveling trips and then come back randomly. And that was sort of our relationship. And it would be weird. I would get a message at like 3:00 in the morning and he's in Poland, And so I'd see some weird pictures from Poland and then he'd be back and we would talk about it, yada, yada. So, in 2015, I was living in Asbury Park at this point. I just got done my first full year at teaching at Neptune Middle School. And he hit me up out of nowhere. And he's like, I'm staying in Belmar right now. I just got back from Turkey. I would love to see you. And I was like, I'd love to see you. So we met up on the beach and we had one of the best talks I've ever had in my life. It was 4 or 5 hours on the beach, right outside of DJ's. So you could picture the soundtrack happening as this whole really deep heart-to-heart's happening while there's club music going on and thumping in the background. But we talked about everything. We talked about spirituality, and we talked about our families and everything. And I remember there was this overall demeanor in him where he seemed so focused. He seemed so focused and he seemed like he had a purpose. And that was something that never really, it never seemed to be who he was. And so I remember even saying at one point, I was like, I feel like this last big trip you did, which was he did this weird bike tour. He went from Poland all the way down to Turkey on bike. Incredible. And I was like, I feel like this was like a sojourn for you. I feel like you're way more focused than I've ever seen you before. What's going on? Like, do you have a plan? And he's like, yeah. No, I actually have this idea, and I actually want to bring you in on it. I'm not really sure yet. And I was like, well, yeah, whatever you need. What is it? He's like, well, I can't really talk about it yet. I'm like, okay, well, just let me know. And I was like, are you still doing the gambling thing? And he was like, no, absolutely not. And I was like, oh, okay. He goes, they're all scumbags. I'm never doing that again. I was like, that's fantastic. Well, I can't wait to hear what you have planned. So we wrapped it up. We went for a little bit of a walk, and then he walked me back to my car, and I hugged him. And something felt different that I'd never felt before with him. But I was like, it's just he just got back. He's probably jet lagged or something. And I got back into my car, and he shot me a look that to this day, and it's 10 years later, and it still unnerves me a little bit. I've never seen him look at me like this before. I know what it is now. At the time, I thought I did something wrong. I was like, oh, I'm weird. I did something wrong. There's something I did. And I just was like, I'll talk to him about it later. I'll ask him about it later. And then a couple days later, sent him a message just saying like, hey, it was, really nice to see you. I'm glad we got to reconnect. And he wrote back, it was more than a good time. Thank you. Okay. So you go on about your day. You go on about your week. A couple days later, I get a message from a mutual friend. And she goes, I'm at work right now. I'm seeing something online. Have you talked to Justin? And I was like, I just saw him. He was just here. And she was like, well, something's going on. I can't really get into it. Can you find out what's going on with Justin? I'm like, sure. And I'm thinking like, so I Google, because I knew he was staying at Belmar at the time with a couple of friends. So I Googled his full name, Justin Cook, and I wrote Belmar. And the first Google result that came in said, body pulled from lake. And immediately I wanted to throw up. And so I kept Googling, and then it was body identified as Justin Cook, pulled from Lake Como, which immediately Lake Como is the boundary lake between Belmar and Spring Lake. I think it's approximately 3 feet of water, which is incredibly shallow. And I'm thinking, how did he drown in 3 feet of water? and at 10 o'clock in the morning. So I called the person he was staying with, and they were lifelong friends. It's my friend Nick. We're still friends, obviously. And I called Nick. I'm like, Nick, what's going on? And as he started telling me that Justin was gone and that he had done it to himself, I didn't faint, but I lost all strength in my legs. And I remember just winding up on the floor somehow, just sitting and listening and taking it all in. And it was like a bomb went off. I don't know how else to describe it. For whatever reason, Justin decided to walk into the lake at 10 o'clock in the morning and not come out. One of the big questions I'm always asked when I talk about this is, like, how did he do it? Why did he do it? I don't have answers to any of those questions, and I don't really think it matters. He's gone. And that really sucked. And when I think about that time period, that summer, the only word I have for it is heartbreak. I was heartbroken. Because as we started digging into why, none of it made any sense. We would find these letters and these notes. His journal was scribbles. None of it made any sense. It was all circular talk to himself. A lot of the journal entries would be about how great other people were and how he would refer himself as a piece of crap a lot. A lot of the letters that we received would talk about how wonderful we all were, but then it was rambling and none of it made any sense. And you just realized that this was a real window to whatever it was that was going on. And I think the worst part about walking away from it, about just when I reflect on this whole experience with Justin, is that this was all going on in his head and we all missed it. Again, I remember sitting on the beach with him and saying, wow, you seem really, you seem really focused and you seem like you have it together. And I couldn't imagine whatever it was that was going on in his head, because looking back at it, it's the classic signs that someone is about to do this. And I can't imagine the storm that was going on before that conversation I had with him, during that conversation I had with him. And I had no idea. He was a great friend that I had for 3 years. And I think about him a lot. I think about how he should still be here. And it's unfortunate that he's not. It's heartbreaking that he's not, because he was a really great guy and he was a great friend. And I guess if I had there's no way to kind of wrap this story up in a little bow. The only thing I could talk about is how I experienced that afterward. And it was just processing it and dealing with it and focusing on it. Not living in it, but just when feelings would come up, not to stifle them and just to let them happen. And sometimes it would just be me washing the dishes and suddenly I would just break out into tears. Sometimes I would see something that reminded me of him. It could be an old episode of The Simpsons. It could be just seeing a fluorescent windbreaker jacket and remembering how ridiculous his style was and how wonderful he was. And sometimes it could just be the frustration, letting myself be frustrated with myself that we didn't see it. And that if there's any message that comes out of any of this, is that, you don't know what someone's walking around with. You don't know what someone is dealing with, because you're just seeing what they're choosing to let you see. And so just as you go forward, just be mindful of when you have an interaction with someone, you have no idea what's underneath, and maybe just be a little more patient. And when they're telling you things, listen a little deeper. Thank you. That's my thing.
Oh, good. What do you think that look means?
What's up?
What do you think that look that he gave you means?
I think he was studying me. I think he knew that was the last time we were going to see each other.
Really?
Yeah. He killed himself 4 days later. And so he knew damn good well that that was the last time we were going to see each other.
I did not think that was where that story was going. I thought that was like, that's when you realized